Okay, we are joined today by everyone's favorite pantomime dame, Mama G. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Rhys. It's a pleasure to be here.
I suppose we should start right at the beginning. How did you first discover panto? How did you fall in love with the art form?
Oh, that's a very good question. I was very lucky that when I was little, I was taken to the pantomime by my mum, especially, but also by the rest of my family. And I grew up in Plymouth, so we would go to the Theatre Royal in Plymouth every Christmas, and I'd see some of the best panto performers of that period. I saw Hinge and Brackett, who are a famous double act. I saw Roy Hudd, Jack Tripp, Eric Sykes, Des O'Connor, Ruth Maddock, John Inman, people like that. So I
Yeah.
really saw a who's who of panto. So it was impossible for me to not grow up loving it.
Mm. And what made you want to get on the stage yourself then? How did you take that? How did you take that journey?
Well, I think even as a very young child, I thought pantomime was just magical and a warm, inviting, fabulous place to be. And what I especially noticed, even as a small child, is the effect it had on other people.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you've ever been to Plymouth, but like many post-war cities, it's very grey and it's full of concrete. And during the winter, it can look a bit miserable in the city centre, and the theatre is quite concrete as well. But inside, everyone would walk in feeling a bit drab and feeling a bit gloomy. But once they got inside, and you've got the glitter and all the lights and the music and the dry ice and the laughter, everyone would leave completely cheered up and transformed. And as a child, I thought that was fascinating, and I wanted to have that impact on people. And so I just whittled down all of my school subjects until I was left with drama at university. And then in my final year, I wrote to every panto producer I could find listed on the itsbehindyu.com diary.
Mhm.
And here we are, almost
Yeah.
20 years down the line.
And I know there's quite an interesting name about how you've got the name Mama G.
Ah, well, yes.
Yeah.
So the name Mamaji came about because the pantomime that fundamentally changed my life was Mother Goose with Roy Hudd and Jack Tripp in Plymouth. And it's always been it's a wonderful story, and it's been a pantomime that I've been fascinated with ever since, especially because the dame is the lead role. And about 6 years ago, when I started the storytelling, I was producing a production of Mother Goose at the Brighton Fringe, and I needed a way of promoting it. And I thought, well, I'll try storytelling because Mother Goose is traditionally a storyteller. But I thought, so as not to confuse the two things, the production and the storytelling, I would call myself Mama G. And there must be something about the name because people picked up on it and ran with it very quickly. So, yes, Mama G is a slightly cooler version of Mother Goose.
Oh, fantastic. And it would be a disappointment for me to not talk about the BGT performance. So how did the Dame Nation come together and what was it like appearing on Britain's Got Talent?
Well, I think we're very lucky because for most of us, as far as I know, BGT was a wonderful experience, and not everyone can say that. We were brought together through BGT actually because they wanted a pantomime dame
Oh,
act, and so they got a group of us together. But then they left us to our own devices to work out what that act would be.
yeah.
So the only thing we knew for sure is that we would be on the television, but we didn't know
Mm.
how well we would do or how far we'd go. Um, we had a great time putting it all together. There was eight of us and our choreographer Carly. We had a wonderful time. And then on the day of our first audition, which was at the London Palladium, and it was the first day of filming for Britain's Got Talent post-pandemic. It was the first time that some of us had been back on a stage since the pandemic.
Mm.
It was a very, very exciting and slightly overwhelming day, and our performance went very well. So it was just extraordinary. And the nice thing about Britain's Got Talent is when you're in the waiting area, you're surrounded by just the most fabulous and random people. We were surrounded by dance schools, acrobats, gospel choirs, comedians. It's such a lively and exciting
Mm.
atmosphere. So I feel very lucky that we did it.
Mm. So apart from that, most people will recognize you from your tours of reading storybooks to kids. So where did that come from and how did that start?
Well, that ties in with where I got my name
Mm,
because it started in order to promote Mother Goose at the Brighton Fringe. But like I said, people picked up on it really quickly and it grew into this mammoth thing that I do now.
mhm,
But I was always very clear that to be a pantomime dame out of season, going into spaces where pantomime dames aren't normally seen, such as libraries and schools, I had to have a reason to be doing it. And I also fundamentally believe that any form of art is inherently political or making a point or should have something to say. And so I decided to tell stories about being who you want and loving who you are to try and give people the confidence to be their fabulous selves, which most people, dare I say it, aren't given those tools when they're younger, because unless you're at school and you're and this is going back a little bit, but when I was growing up, unless you were a white
mhm,
middle class boy, uh, heterosexual,
mhm,
probably. At even primary school, you were considered different. And if you acted outside or looked outside of that linear norm, then your life could be quite difficult. So I just think it's really important that kids, no matter who they are, what they look like, where they come from, how they sound, what they're interested in, I think it's really important that everyone's told that that's really valid and really cool. And so that's where the storytelling
oh,
came from and developed. And I think it's actually a message that people really, really, really need to hear. So it's taken me all over the place, which is amazing.
And from sort of from reading other people's stories to writing your own, you obviously recently announced that you've created your own picture book of Oh Yes I Am. So how did that come to be?
Oh, well, nice segue, Rhys. Um, so after Britain's Got Talent, I thought, well, I need to have something that's good to go because when
Mhm,
people do well on Britain's Got Talent, you only really have a short time to uh, market yourself and
mhm,
get the ball rolling. So I wrote Oh Yes I Am because I knew I wanted my thing to be a picture book,
mhm,
and I knew I wanted it to be pantomime related. Um, but obviously, when you get to the semi-finals, if that's as far as you go, you have to work very hard to maintain any sort of public interest in you afterwards. So it took a little while for people to get interested in the book.
mhm,
But what happened is I decided to film it and put it on YouTube at Christmas so people could watch. And a rather lovely author called James Mayhew, who's the author of The Frog's Kiss with his husband Toto, and he's also the illustrator of Nen and the Lonely Fisherman with an author called Ian Eagleton, and lots of his own books in his own right.
mhm,
Um, he saw it and he was looking for a illustration project for his husband, his first picture book. And James messaged me and said that they both loved the story. Would he mind if he contacted some publishers for me? And that's how it all started, which is incredibly
mhm.
exciting.
So for those who've obviously experienced Panto, they'll recognize the name Oh Yes I Am sort of instantly.
Hmm.
But why did you decide that name for your picture book?
Well, that's a very good question. If you've not seen a panto before, then you may not be aware that panto has lots of standard call and responses between the people on stage and the audience. And one of the famous responses that is very ingrained in British culture is that if someone says, "Oh no, it isn't," you
Mhm,
will probably respond with, "Oh yes, it is." If
yeah.
someone says, "Oh no, you're not," someone will shout back, "Oh yes, I am." It's
Mhm.
that's that I know in the panto that will go back and forth for ages. And obviously I was trying to work out how to make a pantomime themed story that also helped me explore my message of being who you want and loving who you are. And I realized that the phrase, "Oh yes, I am," is very empowering. And when it's used in a panto context, it's always somebody standing up for themselves,
Mhm,
not backing down, and valuing who they are. And so I created a story about a boy who is taught by a pantomime dame to say, "Oh, yes, I am." And the more that he says, "Oh, yes, I am," the more he becomes the person out on the outside that he knows he is on the inside. And I think it's really exciting that now when I read the book, I have hundreds of children shouting, "Oh yes, I am," back to me because it just feels like
Hmm.
they're all so proud of who they are.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned obviously the putting together process, but the actual deciding what goes where inside the book, what was that process like?
Well, for me, that was very easy because the book is published by Graphic, which is a fantastic publisher of books for children and young people. And they took care of all of that. One day, I got an email from them with a PDF of the book layout and the illustrations. And all they did was ask me if I had any feedback, and I gave them one or two pieces. But they'd obviously spent months with Toto, who is the illustrator, going back and forth,
Yeah.
working out how the text needed to be split up, which pictures needed a full two-page spread.
Mhm.
And the result is very beautiful. It's quite
Mm.
extraordinary, actually, and I'm very proud of it and very proud that everyone saw the value of the story, that they wanted to put their own heart and commitment to it as well.
Yeah, you obviously you had great feedback, but what's the feedback from the public been like? What's the sort of response to you releasing the book?
It has been so positive. It's very touching, because I think I've had good feedback from people who are fans,
Hmm.
which I would hope for and expect. But it's also been really nice to read, reviews on websites and blogs and just people at my story times, or people who are communicating with Toto who don't know me at all. I think a lot of people are resonating, especially adults, interestingly, because the book starts in a grey world and
Mm.
Bobby has color inside of him. He's the main character,
Mhm.
but everyone dims his light until he becomes as grey as everybody else. And then when he learns to say, "Oh, yes, I am," he makes the world brighter bit by bit.
Mm.
And it's amazing how many people actually respond to that narrative. A lot of people recognize some form of
Mm.
grayness in themselves, whether it's something they experienced as a child, something they've experienced as an adult. And I think everyone's experienced knowing that you have to battle beyond that grayness to make your world
Mm.
brighter. And although it's very simple, I think just the nature of saying, "Oh yes, I am," looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "Oh yes, I am, I'm enough, I'm this, I'm that," is actually a very small tool into
Mm.
helping you make your world brighter and the
Yeah.
world brighter for people you love. So there was any that was a very long way of answering the question to say, yes, Rhys, the response has been very good. Thank you for asking.
Obviously, I know your message is primarily targeted towards obviously queer individuals.
Mm.
But that idea of greyness and color obviously resonates with almost everyone. There is something that maybe you don't want to tell or don't want you want to keep secret, you keep hidden. And so obviously that naturally would appeal to a much greater target audience. So everyone's got that thing that they maybe don't feel as proud of, and embracing that is obviously really important. Um,
Yes, absolutely. I actually think that's sort of a core thing to my whole storytelling, is that whilst I think the stories do appeal to a queer slash LGBTQ audience, actually everyone deserves to be told that they are valid and they are valued and they are valuable, because uh, oftentimes you're not told that. There, so many adults have told me that they weren't told that as a child.
yeah.
And so I really hope that this allows everyone to go, "Oh no, I can be a bright and wonderful person in whatever form that takes."
Yeah. And talking about the larger audience, you recently made an announcement that you are bringing Oh Yes, I Am to the stage. So was that always the idea, or did that come after the responses from the public?
That was never the idea. I know it's very popular for picture books to be put on the stage. I know that Julia Donaldson books and David Walliams books, for example, are quite often touring the country as stage plays. But I was invited by Underbelly, who run the Boulevard Theatre in Soho,
Mhm.
to present my show, The Magic Bookmark, in December. But I had, for the year, put The Magic Bookmark to bed,
Mhm.
and it's a big show to get out of the cupboard. And so I said I didn't think it would work, but I could maybe do a story time. And
Mhm.
they said, "Yep, that would sounds lovely." But then I thought, oh, I could do something really wild, and I could try and turn Oh Yes I Am into a
Mm,
pantomime because it will be the season. And so I approached them with that idea, and they were very keen. And
mhm,
so that is what we're doing. It's going to be about the show itself is an hour,
mhm.
and we're it's going to be because everybody who's involved is also mid panto rehearsals of
Yeah.
their own, including myself. So we're going to all have our scripts in our hands,
Mhm.
and we'll be bringing the story of Oh Yes I Am to life on stage. There will be transformations. There's going to be original songs, lots of terrible jokes, lots of joining in, a baddie, a goodie, a hero, and a dame. And the great thing about this is because there will be no rehearsal for
Mhm.
us. We'll all read the script. And the stage directions are very clear, and we'll only have met about 3 or 4 hours before the performance
Wow.
as a group.
Yeah.
So anything could happen in the true panto fashion, and I think that's going to be really exciting. So it's properly going to be a once in a lifetime experience.
You mentioned the cast there. What I've noticed is you've got a really incredible cast of performers bringing this show to the stage, including Holly Mallet, who I've interviewed previously. But what is it like bringing such a star-studded cast to your brand new show? That must add pressure.
It does add pressure. I do have the advantage that I know all of the
Mhm,
performers and they all know me. So I'm going to be in it as
mhm.
myself. Um, Don One, who is a fantastic drag king, sorry, who is probably best known for being on Late Night Lycett with Joe Lycett on Channel 4 and is a regular at Prides up and down the country. He's an absolutely incredible performer. He'll be playing the baddie.
Oh.
Um, and then yes, Holly Mallet, who's from Andy and the Odd Socks. She will be playing Bobby, who's the main character. And Holly has also written some of the songs that we will be
Oh.
singing, which are absolute bangers, which is very exciting. So Don One has done some prides for me.
Hmm.
Holly has been in Panto with me and has also performed at some prides for me, and we know each other from the festival circuit. And then the top of the bill is this is absolutely wild.
Mhm.
Is Kiwi Lynch, who is one quarter of Bewitched.
Wow.
Um, and she and I did Panto together about 10 years ago at the Woodville Theatre in Gravesend. And we had an absolutely lovely time, and her sister Adele was in it as well,
Mm.
and I just adored them. And then Kiwi made a fundamental mistake this year. She sent me a message on Facebook, which was a picture of her holding my book. And she said how much she loved it and she was so proud of me. And I was so touched. And we had a nice little conversation about it. And she said that her children loved it as well. And then when I had the idea to put Oh Yes I Am on stage, I thought, well, you've got to make a splash.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
I've got to get a cast together. And so I messaged Kiwi and I explained to her what
Mm.
I was doing and
Wow.
how I'd like her to play the mum. And she said yes so quickly. I was gobsmacked.
Mm.
And considering, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, considering that she is from Bewitched, who are an iconic and legendary
Totally.
pop group, that are still like, if you say Bewitched to
Yeah.
anybody, people are still like they're amazing, or people say she fights like a da, which I love. But when Kiwi told her children that Mama G had asked her to be in a show with her, her children described her as the chosen one.
Oh.
And I was so
Oh.
touched. And it's so silly because
Mm.
I'm so excited that Kiwi is in the show, and I'm very excited that Holly and Donna are in the show as well. But
Mm.
the teenage me would never have believed that one of Bewitched was going to be in a show that I wrote and created because I know her. It's wild, absolutely wild.
So obviously you're, as you said, you are starring in it yourself. Does it add sort of another complexity that you've written it and are in it? Is there points where you've thought this isn't what I imagined at first? Has it changed being put on stage?
It has changed being put on stage. I thought it was going to be quite difficult to expand it because the book is only 500 words long. It might even be less. Um, but actually, once I found my way in, it was lots of fun to write,
Hmm.
and it's quite meta because I'm going to be the author of the book playing a character
Yeah.
based on me, which is very odd. Um, but no, it was really once I got started writing it, it was really fun. And I think one thing I've learned is that selling a book is as hard as it is to sell anything,
Mm.
and you have to use a lot of imagination to find ways of getting your book
Mm.
through the crowd and seen in ways that other authors haven't.
Hmm.
And another author who's a fantastic author and illustrator called Jarvis, we were at a book festival together a few months ago and we went out for a drink. And he said to me, well, the good thing for you, Mama G, is that every time you write a book, you've also written yourself a new show.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, yeah, I have. And that's where the idea developed because, of course, quite often authors just write a book and then struggle to work out what to do to talk about it for an hour when it's a 500-page picture book.
Mm.
So I'm really excited that Graphic are really supportive of this initiative. Toto, who's the illustrator, he's coming to the performance as well. So I'm really looking forward to him seeing it on stage.
Mm.
And the fact it's going to be at the Underbelly Boulevard, which is in the middle of Soho, it's basically the West End. It's just it's so good for the book's profile. But I feel like it's all happened in a really organic way. Like none of this is forced. It's just I see opportunity and I seize opportunity,
Mhm.
Rhys.
Totally. So, what can people expect from the show? Why should people come see Oh, Yes, I Am?
Well, the people can expect, first of all, let's talk about that. People can expect lots of music,
Hmm.
lots of laughing, lots of terrible jokes, lots of traditional panto action. We'll also be doing a bit of chat with the audience. We might do a Q&A, or we might just do a bit of panto history
Yeah.
to get everyone warmed up and singing along. And it's just going to be so much fun. And the venue is beautiful. So I think that's a really big advantage. And then why should people come and see it? Well, there's lots of reasons, not just to see Heavey from Bewitched, um, but also because it's going to be the theatre's really intimate.
Hmm.
And so if you've got a child who you're not sure how well they're going to respond to the big spectacle of Panto, actually, if you bring them to the Underbelly Boulevard to see Oh Yes, I Am, you'll be bringing them into a really comfortable,
Mm.
safe, intimate space
Yeah.
where the characters aren't going to be too big. There's not going to be any big scenery or loud bangs. So I think it's going to be a really safe space for children to experience their first panto.
Mm.
If people are interested in panto, I think it's going to be a really exciting way for them to see panto being done differently. Um, because it's a new story to tell in panto. The fact it's going to be done with strips and hands, anything could happen.
Mhm.
The rules aren't there. We're
Yeah.
breaking the rules. If you're LGBT, if you've ever been othered, I
Hmm.
think it's just going to be a really nice way of spending an hour with four people telling you that you're great and that you can achieve anything, but whilst having a lot of fun.
Mm.
And I think we can assume that everybody else in the audience is going to be uplifting each other and
Totally.
celebrating and supporting each other. So lots of reasons to come and see
Mm.
it.
Oh, fantastic. I'm coming to the end of my questions, but I've got two more.
Go
So,
on.
where can people stay up to date with you and the show?
So they can find me on at Mama G Stories across all the socials. I would say I'm probably most active on Instagram and TikTok, but I do have Facebook, YouTube, X, and Threads accounts. Although potentially one of those is on the way out, you never
Yes.
know. Maybe check Blue Sky. Everyone's talking about it, but I don't know what it is. So you can find out there. For also petitepantos.com has more information. If you'd like to book tickets for the show, you can go to underbellyboulevard.com. Tickets are only £12,
Mhm.
and there's a family rate as well. And the show, I can't remember if I've said it, it's on the 8th of December at 12 p.m. and it's going to run for an hour.
Oh, amazing. I'll put the links in the comment below so people can just scroll down and click away. Um,
Yes, please.
my final question is, what advice do you have for people, for new writers, new performers looking to get into the industry?
Oof, that is a good question. And of course, the answer is different to who's asking it and who's giving the answer. But my advice would be just just do what you want to do. If writing makes you happy, write stories, write essays, write jokes, write poems. Just keep writing. And then when you've got something that you feel passionate about or you believe in, that's when you start asking people to read it, asking people who you should send it to. You can go to, open mic spoken word nights. You can write into magazines, send your stories, or publish your
Mhm.
stories on a blog. Um, but the most important thing is that everything you do is driven by passion, because becoming a writer or becoming a performer, they're not easy
Mhm.
roles, they're not easy jobs, they're not easy careers. So you have to have the drive for it. And the performing is the same. My recommendation would be, if you're a younger person, go to drama groups, go to, read plays, watch movies, go and see theatre, go and look at people in the street, see the theatre that's all around us. And if you love it, keep doing it. And then at one point you might have the confidence to go, I think I can do this and be paid.
Mhm.
But you can only think that if you absolutely love it, because if you don't love it, it's a very, very hard industry to work in.
Totally. So that is all the questions I have today. So as I said at the beginning, thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I
My
will,
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
it's all right. I will put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. But thank you so much, and I shall speak to you soon.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.